The spoon trembled in Gefreiter Hans Müller's hand as he stared at the steaming plate before him. Real coffee, not the bitter chicory substitute that had passed for the drink in German trenches, sent aromatic clouds rising through the mess hall of Camp Gordon, Georgia, on a cold morning in February 1918. The psychological transformation of 75,000 German prisoners of war in American camps would prove more devastating to Kaiser Wilhelm's war effort than any battlefield defeat. The freight train's whistle had pierced the Georgia morning air 3 days earlier, its metallic shriek mixing with the scent of pine and the rough wooden benches where exhausted German soldiers sat in stunned silence. Müller, captured during the failed spring offensive near Chateau Thierry, had expected to die in an American prison camp. German propaganda had painted Americans as savage capitalists who would work prisoners to death in industrial hellscapes. Instead, the 22-year-old baker's son from Bavaria found himself facing a breakfast that contained more protein than he had consumed in the previous month of trench warfare. White bread. Actual white bread, not the sawdust-mixed Kriegsbrot that had become standard German military fare. Butter, real butter, not the ersatz margarine made from coal tar that German civilians had learned to spread thin as paper. Coffee with sugar, sugar that sparkled in small ceramic bowls, unlimited quantities of it, available for the simple act of reaching. Müller's diary, discovered in 1973 during renovations of his family's Bavarian farmhouse, captured the moment with devastating clarity. February 14th, 1918. They brought me eggs this morning. 2 whole eggs, fried in actual bacon fat. I have not seen an egg since Christmas 1916. The American soldier who served me apologized that they were out of ham. Apologized for the abundance. The contrast was not lost on the other prisoners filing into the mess hall that morning. Obergefreiter Wilhelm Hartmann, a 31-year-old teacher from Westphalia, had subsisted on daily rations of 200 grams of bread, 50 grams of ersatz sausage, and watery soup for the final 8 months of his service. The trenches around Verdun had offered little beyond hardtack biscuits, so moldy that soldiers nicknamed them concrete, and coffee made from roasted acorns that left men's stomachs cramping with hunger an hour after. Consumption. Here, in enemy captivity, American guards served portions that would have fed 3 German soldiers. Hartmann weighed himself on the camp's medical scale after his first week. He had gained 4 pounds. In 7 days of imprisonment, he had gained more weight than in the previous 6 months of active service. The guards seemed genuinely puzzled by the prisoner's reaction to standard American military rations. Corporal James Mitchell, a farm boy from Iowa, tasked with overseeing the mess hall, wrote to his parents, "The Krauts act like they've never seen food before. Yesterday, one of them tried to save his bread for later, wrapping it in his shirt like it was gold. Had to explain that there would be more at the next meal. He didn't believe me." American abundance wasn't limited to food. The barracks at Camp Gordon featured electric lighting, a luxury that fewer than 10% of German homes possessed even before the war. Indoor plumbing delivered hot water for showers, an amenity unknown to most German soldiers who had spent months washing in frigid streams or not washing at all. The camp library contained over 3,000 books in German, more reading material than existed in many entire German towns. Dr. Friedrich Zimmermann, a captured German medical officer, documented the camp's hospital facilities with clinical precision. American medical supplies included morphine, ether, and surgical instruments that German field hospitals hadn't possessed since 1915. The camp dentist offered services that German civilians paid premium prices to receive if they could afford them at all. Prisoners received dental care, eye examinations, and treatment for ailments that German military medicine had long ago stopped addressing due to supply shortages. But the most profound shock came not from material comfort, but from American attitudes toward their captives. The Geneva Convention required humane treatment of prisoners, but American guards went beyond legal requirements. They shared cigarettes, taught English during off-duty hours, and displayed photographs of their own families while asking about German prisoners' loved ones back home. Private Robert Sullivan from Boston had lost his brother in the Argonne Offensive, yet he spent his evenings helping Gefreiter Klaus Weber practice English pronunciation. Weber, whose letters home passed through American censors with remarkable leniency, wrote to his wife in Munich, "The Americans treat us better than our own officers treated us. Yesterday, when I was sick with fever, the guard brought me extra blankets and soup. His brother died, fighting against my regiment, yet he shows me kindness. I no longer understand this war. Why would a nation supposedly struggling to feed its own population lavish such resources on enemy prisoners? But the greatest revelation was yet to come, one that would shatter everything these men believed about American industrial capacity and transform captivity into the most effective propaganda campaign in modern warfare. Steam hissed from the locomotive's pistons as German prisoners stepped off the train at Camp Devens, Massachusetts, the mechanical rhythm mixing with the smell of coal smoke and the crunch of gravel beneath their boots. What they witnessed next would demolish every assumption about American industrial weakness. These men were about to encounter evidence that America's capacity to wage war exceeded anything the German High Command had calculated or even imagined possible. The camp supply depot stretched across 12 acres, a warehouse complex that received daily shipments of manufactured goods from across the continental United States. Gefreiter Mueller, transferred from Georgia after demonstrating carpentry skills, found himself assigned to inventory duty alongside Obergefreiter Karl Richter, a metal worker from the Ruhr Valley who had spent 3 years producing artillery shells in Germany's most advanced factories. Richter's background made him uniquely qualified to understand what he was witnessing. German war production had peaked in 1917 at roughly 15,000 artillery shells per day across the entire Reich. The manifest he held in his hands showed that a single American factory in Connecticut had shipped 22,000 shell casings to Camp Devens in the previous week alone. Not for combat use, these were training shells for American soldiers who would never see the front lines. The numbers defied comprehension. Richter documented his observations in letters to his brother Heinrich, who managed a munitions plant in Essen. March 5, 1918. They waste more steel in a day than we produce in a month. Yesterday, I watched American guards use perfectly good barbed wire to fence a vegetable garden. We would have used that wire to reinforce 3 kilometers of trench line. They have so much, they use it for tomatoes. The Red Cross parcels arriving at Camp Devens provided another window into American abundance. Each package contained items that had become myths in wartime Germany: chocolate, condensed milk, cigarettes, soap, razor blades. But the prisoners gradually realized these weren't special provisions. They were surplus from American civilian production. Mrs. Elizabeth Morrison, a Red Cross volunteer from nearby Ayer, Massachusetts, supervised the distribution process. Her diary, donated to the Smithsonian in 1964, revealed the volunteer's perspective. The German boys seem amazed by the simplest things. One young man wept when I handed him a bar of ivory soap. He said he hadn't seen soap in 8 months. We have so much soap at home that I use it to wash dishes. What kind of country sends its soldiers to war without soap? The transformation accelerated when prisoners were assigned to work details on local farms. Massachusetts agriculture in 1918 operated with mechanization that made German farming look medieval. Gefreiter Hans Weber, assigned to the Thornton Dairy Farm in Harvard, Massachusetts, milked more cows in a single morning than his family's farm in Württemberg owned in total. Farmer Daniel Thornton owned 4 mechanical milking machines, devices that German agricultural journals had described as experimental technology available only to the wealthiest landowners. Thornton used them daily for a herd of 60 Holstein cattle that produced more milk in a week than Weber's entire village consumed in a month. Weber's letters home, intercepted by German censors and preserved in Berlin archives, caused significant concern among German intelligence officers. They have machines for everything. The farmer showed me a gasoline-powered tractor that does the work of 8 horses. He owns 2 of them. He apologizes for the old one, says he plans to buy a newer model next spring. There are more tractors in this one county than in all of Bavaria. American abundance manifested itself in ways that violated every principle of wartime economy that German prisoners understood. At Camp Devens, kitchen staff threw away more food daily than most German units received in weekly rations. Sergeant Timothy O'Brien, a mess supervisor from Chicago, noticed prisoners attempting to save scraps for later consumption. Had to explain 3 times that there would be fresh bread tomorrow, O'Brien wrote to his wife. They kept asking if I was certain. One fellow spoke pretty good English, said in Germany they hadn't seen white flour since the British blockade started, said his mother was grinding acorns to make bread. I gave him an extra loaf to send home, but the censors won't allow it. The camp's recreational facilities provided another shock to German sensibilities. A fully equipped gymnasium contained exercise equipment that German officers would have considered luxuries. The library's German language section included philosophical works, technical manuals, and literature that had been banned or restricted in Germany due to paper shortages. Obergefreiter Wilhelm Hartmann, the former teacher from Westphalia, spent his evenings reading American engineering magazines. The technical specifications he found challenged everything German propaganda had claimed about American industrial backwardness. American steel production exceeded German output by a factor of 4. American coal mining operations used electric equipment that German mines couldn't afford. American railways transported freight volumes that made German logistics look primitive. But the most devastating revelation came through American guards' casual conversations about home. Private Sullivan mentioned that his family owned an automobile, a luxury that in Germany belonged exclusively to military officers and industrial magnates. Corporal Mitchell described electric lighting in his family's farmhouse, indoor plumbing, and a telephone connection to town. These weren't wealthy men. They were farmers' sons, factory workers, shopkeepers' apprentices. Yet, they possessed material comforts that German aristocrats envied. Abundance was America's secret weapon. What would you do if your captors possessed wealth so vast they could afford to waste resources that your own nation desperately needed? Would you maintain loyalty to a cause that had clearly underestimated the enemy's strength? The German prisoners faced this moral crisis daily, as evidence mounted that their homeland had challenged an industrial giant whose capacity for production seemed limitless. But their greatest shock was yet to come, a revelation that would arrive in the form of American newspapers describing battles where German skill meant nothing against overwhelming material superiority. Newsprint crackled between Gefreiter Mueller's fingers as he unfolded the Boston Herald in the Camp Devens library, the smell of fresh ink mixing with leather-bound books, and the soft scratch of pencils on paper as other prisoners wrote letters home. These men were about to discover that everything their government had told them about American military capacity was not just wrong. It was catastrophically, impossibly wrong. The headlines of April 15, 1918, described American industrial mobilization with statistics that German prisoners initially dismissed as propaganda. The United States had produced more artillery shells in the first quarter of 1918 than Germany had manufactured in the entire previous year. American shipyards were launching cargo vessels faster than German U-boats could sink them. American aircraft factories were producing more planes monthly than the German Air Force possessed in total. Mueller, whose English had improved through evening classes with Corporal Mitchell, translated the newspaper articles for other prisoners. The numbers seemed too large to be real. American steel production, 4.7 million tons monthly. German steel production at its wartime peak, 800,000 tons monthly. American coal mining, 54 million tons per month. German coal production, 4.2 million tons per month. Obergefreiter Richter, the metal worker from the Ruhr Valley, performed calculations on brown wrapping paper. If these figures were accurate, American industrial capacity exceeded German production by ratios that made the war's outcome inevitable. Germany wasn't just losing. Germany had never possessed the resources necessary to win. Dr. Friedrich Zimmermann received permission to correspond with his brother Klaus, a professor of economics at the University of Berlin. Their exchange, preserved in the Berlin State Archives, captured the growing realization among educated German prisoners. Klaus: the American newspapers publish production statistics that seem impossible. They claim to manufacture 15,000 trucks monthly while maintaining civilian automobile production. Our entire army possesses fewer trucks than they produce for civilian use in a single week. Either this is elaborate deception, or we have been fighting an enemy whose strength we never comprehended. Klaus Zimmermann's reply, written 3 weeks later, confirmed his brother's worst fears. Friedrich: our intelligence estimates of American capacity were wrong by factors of 10 or more. The Americans were producing war materials in quantities our generals considered impossible, while simultaneously maintaining civilian prosperity. We have been David fighting Goliath, except we forgot to bring the sling. The psychological impact accelerated when prisoners gained access to American technical magazines. Popular Mechanics described manufacturing processes that German engineers had only theorized about. Scientific American featured articles about mass production techniques that exceeded anything German factories had achieved. The Saturday Evening Post contained advertisements for civilian products that German military contractors couldn't obtain at any price. Gefreiter Hans Weber, still working at the Thornton Dairy Farm, discovered that his employer subscribed to 6 different agricultural magazines. Each publication described farming methods, mechanical equipment, and productivity levels that made German agriculture appear primitive. Weber's weekly letters to his wife in Württemberg gradually shifted from descriptions of American abundance to questions about German propaganda. Greta: they have machines that plant seeds, cultivate crops, and harvest grain with minimal human labor. One farmer with proper equipment can manage more land than our entire village, tens collectively. The magazines show photographs of these machines being manufactured in enormous factories. If this technology exists, why do our agricultural experts claim German farming methods are superior? The camp's movie nights provided another revelation. American cinematography displayed production values that German prisoners had never witnessed. The sets, costumes, and technical effects required resources that German film studios couldn't access even during peacetime. But more disturbing were the casual glimpses of American civilian life visible in the background. Automobiles, electric appliances, modern buildings, well-dressed crowds. Obergefreiter Wilhelm Hartmann, analyzing these films with a teacher's analytical mind, wrote in his journal, "The Americans aren't trying to impress us with their wealth. These films are made for American audiences who consider such abundance normal. Electric lights, telephones, and indoor plumbing appear in scenes without comment because American viewers expect these comforts. We are witnessing not propaganda, but documentary evidence of a society that has achieved material prosperity we can barely imagine." Truth emerged in unexpected moments. Private Sullivan mentioned that his family's farm in Iowa employed seasonal workers who earned more in harvest months than German factory workers earned annually. Corporal Mitchell described his brother's job at a Ford automobile factory where workers received paid vacations, medical benefits, and retirement pensions. Sergeant O'Brien talked about his neighborhood in Chicago, where immigrant families from Ireland and Poland owned their own homes within years of arriving in America. These weren't boasts or attempts at psychological warfare. They were casual conversations about ordinary American life that revealed a standard of living completely unknown in Europe. The prisoners faced a devastating realization. Germany had not just underestimated American military capacity, They had failed to comprehend that American society functioned on principles that made German social organization appear backward. American workers earned wages that provided genuine prosperity. American farms produced food surpluses that fed both civilians and soldiers abundantly. American factories manufactured consumer goods alongside military equipment without choosing between butter and guns. Camp Devens became a classroom where German prisoners learned that their enemy possessed not just superior resources, but superior systems for organizing human productivity. The revelations accumulated daily. American women worked in factories, producing munitions. American civilians invested personal savings in government bonds to fund the war effort. American communities organized volunteer drives that supplied more materials than German requisition programs could extract through force. If you had spent 3 years fighting an enemy you believed was weak and divided, what would you do upon discovering that enemy possessed industrial might that dwarfed your nation's capacity? Would you maintain faith in leaders who had sent you to fight an unwinnable war? But the prisoner's education in American power was approaching its climax, a revelation that would arrive through personal encounters with American families whose generosity toward enemies would challenge everything. German propaganda had taught about American character. Church bells chimed across the New England countryside on a crisp Sunday morning in October 1918, their bronze voices mixing with the scent of wood smoke from farmhouse chimneys and the soft rustle of autumn leaves beneath the feet of German prisoners walking to services in Ayer, Massachusetts. What these enemy soldiers discovered about American character would prove more transformative than all the industrial might and material abundance they had witnessed combined. The Congregational Church of Ayer had voted unanimously to invite German prisoners from Camp Devens to attend Sunday services. Reverend Samuel Morrison, whose son had died fighting the German army in the Argonne Forest just 6 weeks earlier, stood at the church door personally greeting each prisoner as they entered. His handshake was firm, his German carefully practiced. Guten Morgen. Willkommen in Gottes Haus. Gefreiter Müller sat in the third pew, surrounded by American families whose sons, brothers, and husbands were fighting against his former comrades in France. The woman beside him, Mrs. Catherine Walsh, had lost her eldest boy at Belleau Wood. When Müller struggled to follow the English hymnal, she quietly pointed to each line, helping him sing Amazing Grace in a language he was still learning. During the prayer for peace, Müller watched tears stream down Mrs. Walsh's face. After the service, she approached him with a small wrapped package. Inside, hand-knitted wool socks, a tin of homemade cookies, and a letter written in careful German expressing hope that his family in Bavaria was safe and that he would return home soon. The psychological transformation was complete, but not through conquest. This scene replicated itself across dozens of American communities hosting German prisoners throughout the autumn of 1918. In Kansas, farm families invited prisoners to Sunday dinners, sharing their tables with men who had been trying to kill their sons months earlier. In Ohio, church groups organized English classes taught by volunteers whose own relatives were fighting overseas. In Pennsylvania, women's auxiliaries collected clothing and personal items for prisoners preparing for eventual repatriation. Dr. Friedrich Zimmermann documented the phenomenon in letters to his wife in Heidelberg, October 28, 1918. The Americans show us a mercy that our own officers rarely displayed toward their subordinates. Yesterday, when young Weber received news that his father had died, Mrs. Morrison, the minister's wife, sat with him for 3 hours while he wept. Her own son died fighting against our army, yet she comforted a German soldier's grief. I no longer understand hatred. The armistice announcement on November 11th reached Camp Devens through telegraph at 11 o'clock in the morning. German prisoners gathered in the mess hall, uncertain whether peace meant liberation or continued captivity. The uncertainty ended when Camp Commander Colonel William Sterling addressed them directly in fluent German explaining that repatriation would begin within months and expressing hope that they would carry positive memories of America back to Germany. But the most profound moments occurred in private conversations between guards and prisoners during those final months. Private Sullivan, who had lost his brother at Chateau Thierry, spent his off-duty hours teaching Gefreiter Weber advanced English. Their conversations, recorded in Weber's diary, revealed the depth of transformation that American treatment had achieved. December 3, 1918. Sullivan asked what I would tell my family about America. I said I would tell them that Americans are not the weak, divided people our newspapers described. They are strong because they choose cooperation over domination. Sullivan said his brother died, believing the war would make the world safer for democracy. He hopes German soldiers will help build that safer world. How can I return to Germany carrying such hope from an enemy? The Christmas season of 1918 provided the culmination of German prisoners' education in American values. Local communities organized gift drives specifically for enemy soldiers spending the holiday in captivity. The Ayer Women's Club collected over 300 personal packages containing cigarettes, candy, writing materials, and handmade items. Each package included a personal note expressing Christmas wishes for the prisoner and his family back home. Obergefreiter Wilhelm Hartmann, the former teacher from Westphalia, received a package from the Thompson family whose teenage son was serving with the American Expeditionary Force in France. Their note, written in halting German by young Margaret Thompson, expressed hope that when this terrible war is over, German and American children can learn about each other as friends instead of enemies. Hartmann's response, preserved in the Thompson family papers, donated to the Massachusetts Historical Society, captured the complete transformation of German prisoners' worldview. Miss Thompson, I have been a teacher for 12 years, but your family has taught me lessons I never learned in any university. You have shown me that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy one's enemies, but from the courage to treat them with dignity. I will carry this lesson back to Germany and teach it to my students for the rest of my life. The repatriation process began in February 1919, with ships departing weekly from East Coast ports. German prisoners boarded these vessels, carrying more than personal belongings. They carried testimonies of American industrial might, democratic values, and human decency that would reshape German understanding of their former enemy. Gefreiter Müller's final diary entry, written aboard the USS America as it departed New York Harbor, provided historians with the most eloquent summary of the German prisoner experience. February 24, 1919. I see the Statue of Liberty growing smaller as we sail toward home. I came to America as an enemy soldier, expecting harsh treatment from a weak nation. I leave as a witness to strength. I never imagined not just the strength of machines and factories, but the strength of people who can show mercy to those who sought to destroy them. The impact of 75,000 German prisoners returning home with such testimonies cannot be measured in traditional military terms. These men became unwitting ambassadors for American values, carrying stories of democratic prosperity and human dignity back to communities across Germany. Their accounts challenged official German narratives about American weakness and provided alternative models for organizing society. Many former prisoners maintained correspondence with American families for decades after the war. Weber continued writing to the Morrison family until his death in 1963. Hartmann established an exchange program between his school in Westphalia and schools in Massachusetts during the 1920s. Dr. Zimmerman published articles in German medical journals praising American humanitarian approaches to prisoner care. The lesson transcended warfare itself. America had discovered that treating enemies with dignity was not weakness, but strategic genius, an investment in future peace that paid dividends for generations. The German prisoners who experienced American abundance, witnessed American industry, and received American kindness became the most effective peace ambassadors in European history. Their transformation proved that the greatest victories are won not through destruction of enemies, but through demonstration that better ways of organizing human society are possible. In showing mercy to their captives, Americans had planted seeds of democracy in the heart of their enemy's homeland, seeds that would bloom into the Marshall Plan, NATO partnership, and enduring alliance between former enemies. The German prisoners returned home, changed men, carrying proof that propaganda lies could be shattered by the simple power of truth, dignity, and inexhaustible American abundance.